Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your gateway to uncovering hidden insights and illuminating mysteries. I'm thrilled you've joined our global community. Whether you're watching from a bustling city skyline or a quiet countryside, we're glad you're here. Globe showing Europe, Africa, so tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Chapter 1, An Invitation to the Country. On a pale London morning, when the light drew neat squares upon the carpet and not a speck of dust dared to linger on the mantelpiece, Hercule Poirot arranged his breakfast tray with ritual care. The cup and saucer stood exactly at the center of the mat. The chocolate pot, polished to a discreet glow, made a precise triangle with the plate of brioche and the small vase holding a single white carnation. He adjusted the carnation by a fraction, then sat back, satisfied. Order, he reflected, is the courtesy we pay to the mind. Post, sir, announced George, his valet, with a discreet cough that indicated both presence and approval. Poirot looked up. Only one letter? The world grows economical in its curiosities. Only one, sir. Hand addressed. Heavy paper. Surrey postmark. Poirot's grey-green eyes brightened. He took the envelope between finger and thumb as a jeweler might examine an emerald. The paper was cream and faintly textured, bearing on the back a device in blind embossing, a spray of hawthorn leaves and berries. Hawthorne, he murmured. Appropriate. It promises charm, but the berries have their little barbs. He rotated the envelope, noting the careful, almost ceremonial script. The address had been written slowly. Not the hesitation of age or illness, he decided, but of intention. He slit the flap, extracting a single sheet. The handwriting extended in disciplined strokes across the page, yet a tremor lurked in the pressure, heavy at the starts of words, light at their ends. The letter read, Monsieur Poirot, I would be honored if you would spend this coming weekend at Hawthorne Lodge, my house in Surrey. I have a small company gathered. There is a matter which may, I think, intrigue your celebrated little grey cells. Pray accept the hospitality of a grateful admirer. Sir Bernard Hawthorne. Poirot held the sheet to the light. Quality paper, George. A watermarked crown, and a faint impression where the writer pressed too hard upon the upper margin. He traced the top edge with a nail. He began a line and changed his mind. And see here, tiny flecks, as if from a sharpened pencil rubbed away. Our Sir Bernard thinks upon his words. George, who had perfected the art of neutral curiosity, ventured, Will you go, sir? Poirot did not answer at once. He sniffed the letter, not perfume, but a dry, medicinal tang. He looked again at the signature, bold, authoritative, and at the sentence invoking his little grey cells. That phrase, which the newspapers relished, sat in the text like a wink. Flattery, yes, Poirot said softly. But also a signal. He knows the public manner of Hercule Poirot. He wishes to speak my language. Steps sounded in the corridor. Hello, Poirot, boomed Captain Hastings, striding in with the air of a man who has beaten London traffic and intends the world to thank him. His hat he placed on a chair with cheerful disregard for the symmetry of the room. You've heard the news? Some fellow at my club says Sir Bernard Hawthorne's putting on a jamboree, weekend in the country, plenty of food and fiddle-de-dee. Engineers, politicians, a sprinkling of the pretty and talented. Sounds rather jolly. Poirot's moustaches twitched. You anticipate me, Hastings. We are invited. Hastings' eyes widened. You don't say. Hawthorne, he's the steel magnate, isn't he? Built half the railway bridges this side of Birmingham. Owns a motor work somewhere in Surrey. A solid chapter. Though I heard his finances been through a patch, nothing serious, mind. Solid men and solid bridges, they both carry weight, murmured Poirot. He handed him the letter. Observe the tone. What does it tell you? Hastings read. Well, he admires you, that's clear. And his polite, none of your dear Sir telegraph business. He wants us at once. Good Lord, intrigue your little grey cells, ha! He's borrowed your phrase, you old dog. Poirot looked pleased, then pensive. Borrowed, yes. But with an ear for drama. This is a man accustomed to audiences, to speeches at dinners. He chooses his words to impress. Yet those little erasures, they betray a hand not entirely steady. Perhaps he had a glass in the other hand, Hastings suggested. I often find a whiskey makes my pen wobble. Ah, but you do not correct the wobble, mon ami, you lean into it with courage. Poirot gestured to the chair. Sit. We shall accept. Hastings brightened. Capital. A breath of the country will do us both good. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. George will telephone for the times of the trains to Godalming. The lodge will have a motor to meet the 12:26. I predict such exactitude with Sir Bernard. He glanced again at the letter. Note the formality, the absence of anything personal. A small company gathered. He gives us no names. And yet he expects us to be intrigued. Hastings, already picturing lawns and croquet, frowned a little. Could be a lark. Or he means to spring some trick at dinner. They sometimes do that, riddles in envelopes. Poirot smiled. Riddles in envelopes are for after coffee. This is a riddle inside the man. He tapped the signature. I am curious what he fears and what he wishes us to see. George, returning with a timetable, paused at the threshold. Sir, shall I pack for 2 nights? And the grey suit, perhaps. My's OUI, the grey. It calms excitable furniture, said Poirot gravely. And the patent leather shoes with the modest shine. We go among the industrialists, we must not dazzle them too much. Hastings laughed. You'll dazzle them anyway. Nature has been generous, Poirot conceded, smoothing his moustaches. He rose, folded the letter along the original crease, and slid it back into its envelope. The little act was exact, reverent almost. I have a thought, Hastings. The hawthorn in winter keeps its berries when other hedges are stripped. It is an emblem of endurance, and also of small thorns. We shall go prepared for both. Hastings peered out at the street where a soft mist blurred the tires of passing cabs. Funny you should say thorns. A chap at the club mentioned Hawthorne Lodge had a reputation for parties that look simple and turn complicated. Music on the terrace, smiling faces, and under it a sense of something, oh, I don't know, coiled. Poirot nodded. The English country house specializes in the illusion of serenity. The gravel walks, the clipped yews, mask and stage. But the human heart, it remains unlandscaped. He resumed his seat. Tell me, what do you know of Sir Bernard? Bit of a self-made man, I think, said Hastings. Married a lady of good birth, Lady Evelyn, very handsome. There's a secretary, a young chap, Fielding, perhaps. And a doctor, family friend, always about, Graves, that's it. The rest is club chatter. The names are useful, Poirot said, eyes half closed. Names are little drawers, one never knows which will hold the pin. He turned to George. You will also telephone Hawthorne Lodge and express my compliments. Say that Monsieur Poirot and Captain Hastings will arrive by the 12:26. If Sir Bernard would be so amiable as to send the motor. Very good, sir. When George had gone, Poirot rose to inspect the letter once more, holding it to the window. In the daylight he saw what he had suspected, beneath the words, faint diagonal indentations, as if another sheet had been written on and this one had taken the ghostly impress. He turned the page slightly, catching the lines at a slant. There, a snatch of a capital N and what might be a trailing Y, nothing legible, only the whisper of a message. "Someone writes with vigor in that house," he murmured. Someone presses hard upon the paper. And Sir Bernard uses the same pad. Hastings, watching him as one watches a conjurer, said, "You can really tell something from that." "I can tell there is haste," Poirot replied. "Haste and correction. The one is not the friend of the other. It creates untidiness. And out of untidiness, my friend, come crimes." He placed the letter upon the mantel, aligning it with the edge, and at last finished his chocolate. "We shall each bring a mind that is rested and an eye that is sharp. Also," he added serenely, "a gift." "A gift?" "For our host. A small box of candied orange peel. It is always as well to sweeten the mouth that must speak." Hastings chuckled. "Trust you to plan for both the stomach and the soul." Poirot adjusted his tie, settled his cuffs, and looked around his immaculate room. The neatness comforted him. Somewhere in Surrey, he felt, another room waited under a bloom of polish and secrecy. Beyond its windows stretched lawns and hedges and quiet, but inside, words had been rubbed out and written again. That, to him, was all the invitation needed. "Come, Hastings," he said. "There is the packing to supervise. Trains do not admire those who are late, and I do not admire trains that are untidy in their timekeeping. Tomorrow, we go to Hawthorne Lodge. And what do we expect to find there?" Poirot smiled with a gentle satisfaction. "We expect hospitality," he said. "And if we are fortunate, we shall find the truth, hidden perhaps behind a very pretty view." Chapter 2: The Gathering at the Lodge. The train from London rattled steadily through Surrey, its rhythmic clatter serving as background to Hastings' cheerful observations about the scenery. Poirot, seated opposite, gazed with a serene expression at the neatly arranged compartments of his suitcase, now resting in the rack above. His mind, however, was elsewhere. He noted the exact minute at which the train departed Waterloo, precisely 12:26, as he had predicted, and, satisfied, settled back. Order had been preserved. The countryside unrolled itself in neat green patches, hedgerows dividing pastures, cottages with thatched roofs leaning like gossips toward the road. Hastings pressed his nose to the glass. "Glorious country, Poirot. Look there, apple orchards. Nothing like the smell of apples ripening. And cricket grounds, you see? Proper English landscape, makes a fellow glad to be alive." Poirot inclined his head politely. "It is very picturesque, mon ami. Though one suspects that beneath the beauty lies mud, always the mud." At Godalming station, a sleek motor car awaited them, polished to a mirror finish. The chauffeur, a man of few words, touched his cap and loaded their bags with efficient speed. Soon they were rolling along a broad avenue lined with beech trees, the dappled sunlight flickering across the car's bonnet. Hawthorne Lodge revealed itself suddenly at the crest of a hill, a stone mansion of late Victorian design, its turret softened by ivy and its windows gleaming in the afternoon light. Broad lawns sloped away, and beyond, orchards and a lake shimmered in the distance. Hastings gave a whistle. "Fine place, what? Looks as though it could swallow half a regiment." Poirot's gaze lingered on the facade. "It is imposing, yes. But do you see, Hastings, the symmetry is imperfect. That left turret leans ever so slightly inward. A flaw. And flaws, they are often more instructive than perfection." They were ushered inside by a butler whose gravity seemed to weigh down even the air of the hall. Marble tiles gleamed underfoot, portraits of Hawthorne ancestors stared solemnly from the walls. Poirot observed the precise arrangement of the umbrellas in the stand and the faint scuff marks leading toward the drawing room. "Sir Bernard awaits you, gentlemen," the butler intoned. The host himself stood before the fireplace, his stance firm as though addressing an assembly. Sir Bernard Hawthorne was a large man, broad of shoulder, his once dark hair now streaked with iron grey. His eyes, a piercing blue, seemed accustomed to command, yet there was something restless in their depths. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings." At last. He extended both hands with bluff warmth. "I cannot tell you how delighted I am you've accepted my little invitation. Welcome to Hawthorne Lodge." Poirot bowed slightly, taking in the man's flushed complexion and the stiffness in his left arm as he gestured. "You are too kind, Sir Bernard. It is always agreeable to breathe the country air." Lady Evelyn Hawthorne entered then, her presence altering the atmosphere. Tall, elegant, with a bearing that bespoke old lineage, she wore a gown of soft grey silk. Her beauty was refined rather than radiant, her expression one of courteous reserve. "Monsieur Poirot," she said with a faint smile, "we are honoured. You will find Surrey less busy than London, but perhaps more restful." Poirot inclined his head. He noted the coolness of her tone, the distance between her and her husband as though an invisible partition divided them. Hastings, meanwhile, nearly tripped over himself in admiration of her poise. The other guests soon gathered in the drawing-room. Poirot observed each with quiet attention. Miss Clara Morton, slender and pale, with dark eyes that absorbed rather than reflected light. She served as Lady Evelyn's companion. Her movements were restrained, but her gaze flitted often to the corners of the room, alert and thoughtful. Dr. Lionel Graves, a genial man of middle years, his tweed jacket smelling faintly of tobacco. He greeted Poirot heartily, speaking with the confidence of one used to pronouncing diagnoses. "We shall keep you well fed here, monsieur." Nothing like a hearty English table to keep the brain sharp. Mr. Jasper Fielding, Sir Bernard's secretary, was perhaps 30, with neatly combed hair and a somewhat nervous manner. His hands, long-fingered, tapped a rhythm upon the arm of his chair, betraying a surplus of energy. Finally, Mrs. Dorothy Finch, a neighbour. Stout, rosy-cheeked, with an eager tongue, she wasted no time in dispensing opinions. "I knew Sir Bernard would bring someone of importance," she declared, eyeing Poirot. "Though between ourselves, monsieur, you must find English society frightfully dull compared with your continental cases. Murders here are never half so dramatic." Poirot raised his brows gently. "One hopes they are not, madam. Drama, it is rarely welcome in domestic life." The company laughed, though Poirot noticed Sir Bernard's smile falter a fraction before he regained his composure. They sat at tea, the silver gleaming, the scones arranged with military precision. Poirot stirred his cup slowly, watching as interactions unfolded. Lady Evelyn and Clara exchanged brief glances, the sort that carry more weight than words. Dr. Graves leaned back expansively, recounting a hunting story. Jasper Fielding scribbled notes on a scrap of paper even during tea, as though the business of Sir Bernard's empire could not pause for clotted cream. Sir Bernard himself dominated the table, his voice resonant, his laughter a shade too loud. "You see, Poirot," he said, "this is no mere country party. I value clever minds, and yours is the keenest. There are matters here, family, business, who can say, that could use such discernment. But enough of that. Tonight, we dine in style." Poirot's eyes flicked to Hastings. "Matters of family and business," he repeated softly. It is vague, yet deliberate. A promise of something hidden. Later, as the guests dispersed before dinner, Poirot took a stroll about the house. He admired the library, its shelves lined with immaculate volumes arranged more for show than use. He noticed too the heavy curtains drawn against the light, and the faint smell of cigar smoke lingering near the desk. On the writing table lay a pad of paper, the top sheet torn away, leaving the impression of words faintly scored into the page. Poirot bent closer, fingertips tracing the indentations. Unreadable at present, but perhaps not unimportant. Dinner that evening was a lavish affair. The dining room blazed with candlelight, the long table gleaming with silver and crystal. Course followed course, turtle soup, pheasant, syllabub. Hastings was in his element, declaring each dish finer than the last. Poirot ate sparingly, observing. Conversations wove across the table. Mrs. Finch regaled all with tales of local scandals. Dr. Graves boasted of the constitution of his patients. Clara spoke little, but her silence seemed deliberate, as though she absorbed everything. Jasper Fielding kept glancing at Sir Bernard, awaiting orders like a soldier. At the head of the table, Sir Bernard raised his glass. To friendship and to truth, he proclaimed. The toast rang through the room, and glasses clinked. Yet Poirot's sharp gaze caught a fleeting shadow in Lady Evelyn's eyes as she sipped, an expression of weariness, almost of dread. Afterwards, in the drawing-room, music was attempted. Clara played the piano softly, a melancholy air that contrasted with the bright chatter. Poirot sat apart, fingers steepled, reflecting. Here was a house filled with civility and polish, yet beneath it he sensed currents of unease. Host and hostess stood apart in more than distance. The secretary's nerves twitched like wires. The doctor smiled too easily. And the neighbour's tongue concealed more than it revealed. Hastings joined him. Well, Poirot, what do you make of it? Quite the gathering, eh? Poirot's moustaches twitched, and he spoke softly, almost to himself. Mon ami, the stage is set. The actors, they take their places. What remains to be seen is the play itself, and whether it shall end in comedy or in tragedy. Chapter 3, A Sudden Death. Morning at Hawthorne Lodge began with the faint chime of a distant stable bell and the soft drift of wood smoke in the corridors. Poirot, who liked the day to present itself neatly, took a measured breakfast of eggs and coffee while Hastings applied himself with patriotic zeal to kedgeree. The household, it seemed, kept a punctual table. The butler's gong had a tone that discouraged idlers. Sir Bernard was in boisterous spirits. Work calls even in Eden, he declared, mopping his brow though the morning was cool. Fielding, the letters. We must have the post ready before noon. Jasper Fielding, already pale, nodded and darted away. Lady Evelyn came late, apologizing for a headache. She wore a strand of pearls and a cardigan of dove grey wool. Her smile was courteous and could be put on or taken off as neatly as a glove. Clara Morton poured her coffee with quiet hands. Her dark eyes noticed who took sugar, who did not, and where the teaspoon returned to rest. Dr. Graves, cheerful as a village fete, ate everything with approval and recommended fresh air as though he had invented it. Mrs. Finch arrived last, a flutter of chiffon and information. Devastating news from the Hunt Committee, she confided, although no one had asked. Also, I saw the fishmonger's van at your back gate, Lady Evelyn. Halibut? How lucky! After breakfast the company divided itself like a school of fish. Sir Bernard vanished into his study. Jasper scurried after him with a ledger pressed to his chest. Lady Evelyn took Clara to the morning room. The murmur of a piano began, self-effacing scales that would never embarrass a guest. Dr. Graves set out for a turn around the lake, promising to return with a healthy appetite and an anecdote to match. Mrs. Finch, protesting that she must call on a friend in the village, drifted in the general direction of the library and somehow did not leave. Hastings proposed a tour of the grounds. The orchard's a marvel, Poirot. And the rose walk. You've never seen such pruning, fellow's a genius with shears. Pruning, said Poirot, adjusting his hat at a precise angle, is the art of deciding what the plant must no longer be. He consented to a stroll, keeping to the dry edges of the paths like a man who distrusts the conspiracy of damp earth and expensive shoes. They found the lake a sheet of polished pewter, the ornamental swan serene in their self-importance. Near the boat-house Hastings paused. Listen. Someone's in a stew. Across the lawn, from an open side window of the study, a voice carried, edged, and impatient. "No more of it, do you hear? Not a farthing. I've paid through the nose and I'm done." The reply was too low to catch. Poirot raised a finger. There followed the scrape of a chair, the thud of a drawer, then Sir Bernard again, shorter now. "Very well. Send the letter." Hastings frowned. "Blackmail? Or a business subscription gone sour," Poirot said lightly, though his eyes had sharpened. "Words, Hastings, they are actors who audition for more than one role." They did not linger. As they rounded the shrubbery, Clara appeared with a small book clutched to her chest. Seeing them, she smiled shyly and moved to pass. A thin pressed flower peeped from the pages, its delicate form caught like a sigh. It slipped and fell. Hastings, all gallantry, stooped to retrieve it. "A violet, is it?" From the lower copse, Clara said, faintly flustered. Lady Evelyn, approaching from the terrace, took the book and tucked the bloom back between two poems with an air that made the act private. "Come, Clara," she said. "We shall practice that Schubert again." At luncheon Sir Bernard ate little, waving away the halibut with a restlessness that refused to be sat upon. He questioned Jasper about telegrams, teased Dr. Graves about the speed of his rounds, and praised Mrs. Finch for bringing news from the village, which she accepted as if she had also brought the village itself. Lady Evelyn spoke only when spoken to. Poirot watched a small drama enacted in silence, when the butler presented a tray of tonics, plain soda, peppermint water, a bitter infusion. Sir Bernard reached for a glass, then, seeing his wife's glance, changed his mind and chose another. A domestic treaty had been enforced with a look. The afternoon drifted towards gold. Guests went to write letters, to nap, to pretend to read. Poirot wandered to the library and stood a moment at the great writing desk. A heavy blotter lay there, a fountain pen to one side, a pad of paper to the other. The top page had been torn away. Poirot lifted the second sheet at an angle to the light. Faint furrows ran across it, diagonal ghosts of a message written in haste. He noted the spacing with interest, then replaced the sheet exactly. In the fireplace, under a net of ash, lay a grey, curled rag of paper not yet executed by flame. The butler entered then with a coal scuttle, and Poirot moved away, hands innocently behind his back. Evening brought the second dinner. Candles were lit early, rain had begun, whispering against the long windows. The table was beautiful in the deliberate way beauty can be when directed by money and a well-trained eye. Silver shone, crystal awaited the light like a polite smile. The menu, murmured by the butler, revealed calm confidence, consommé, pheasant, a pudding whose steam was a sermon on domestic virtue. Conversation ran easily, but underneath it the rain kept its patient counsel. It was during the port and the little biscuits, when appetites were satisfied enough to make people careless, that Sir Bernard rose. He had spoken much and well all evening, now he banged his glass with a ring that made the crystal sing. "A word," he began, with a geniality that had edges. "To friendship? To prosperity? To clarity?" The last word surprised him, he had meant another. He smiled as one does at an awkward servant. "To truth, then." Glasses lifted. Poirot did not drink, he watched. Lady Evelyn's hand trembled when she set her glass down and steadied so swiftly it could have been anyone's imagination. Jasper, who had a trick of looking at Sir Bernard as if he were trying to read him like a memo, swallowed too quickly and coughed. Dr. Graves wiped his brow with a handkerchief that smelt, even at distance, of something officinal. Mrs. Finch leaned forward not to miss a syllable. Clara sat very still, as though waiting for a note to resolve. Sir Bernard smiled, lifted his own glass, and drank. He made a face, not displeasure, exactly, more a child's surprise at finding a familiar sweet slightly altered, then raised the glass again to finish. His other hand went to his throat. The smile slipped, returned, tried to hold. His knees buckled. The port spilled in an elegant arc, striking the cloth like a wound. There was the confusion of kind people trying not to be unkind. Chairs scraped. Voices overlapped. Dr. Graves was quickest to kneel, already dictating to the room. Someone open a window. No, the rain. Never mind, Evelyn, loosen his collar. Jasper, white as paste, stood paralyzed until the butler touched his elbow and he fetched a cushion as if at rehearsal. Mrs. Finch said, "Oh my stars," and then, "I always knew the damp in this house," and then sensibly held her tongue. Clara's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles made small white moons. Poirot did not join the press. He stepped back, fingers together, watching the little eddy of chaos settle into a pattern. The pattern said, a man on the carpet, a doctor whose hands were brisk and whose eyes were worried, a wife as composed as a statue until her breath caught on a sob she sternly refused, a secretary staring at his master's glass as though it were an oracle that had fallen silent. Heart, Dr. Graves pronounced, after minutes that had stretched like wire. His voice carried authority and bewilderment. A seizure. It was too swift. Poirot moved then. "You are certain, doctor?" "As certain as one may be without a post-mortem." The doctor sat back, palms on his thighs, and looked old for the first time. "He has been under strain. I've told him to rest, told him repeatedly." Poirot knelt, but not where Dr. Graves had knelt. He went to the table, to Sir Bernard's place. He lifted the fallen glass by the stem, holding it to the light. A delicate dust clung to the inner rim, as if the crystal had been dipped and not polished. He turned the glass, and the dust caught the candle glow like frost. Hastings hovered. "What have you there?" A whisper, Poirot murmured. A suggestion. He brought the glass to his nose, did not sniff so much as allow the air to inform him. He set the glass aside on a folded napkin he commandeered from the sideboard. Then, leaning over Sir Bernard, he examined the right cuff. There, scarcely visible against the fine cloth, was a faint smear, pale, powdery, the kind of mark that would vanish if one rubbed it without thinking. Lady Evelyn saw him and flinched. "What are you doing, Monsieur Poirot?" "What I must, madam." His tone was gentle. He rose, smoothing the troubled air with his hand. "Madam, I grieve. Monsieur le Docteur, you have done all that could be done. Mr. Fielding, if you please, the telephone. You will ring the local police and ask for the superintendent. You will say that Hercule Poirot begs they come at once." There was a silence in which the rain grew louder. Dr. Graves, bristling, said, "But I told you." "You told me what any wise physician would tell the household," Poirot replied. "It is good that you told them. I, who am not wise but only particular, must tell you something else. Sir Bernard did not die of the heart alone." Mrs. Finch gave a little gasp that she tried to drown in her handkerchief. Jasper backed into a chair and sat down as if remembering how. Clara looked at Lady Evelyn, and Lady Evelyn, to her credit, looked back like a woman who has decided she will not faint in front of the staff. Poirot spoke quietly, and because he spoke quietly everyone heard him. "No one is to leave this room. Forgive me, but we will disturb nothing until the police arrive. The windows remain closed. The glasses remain as they are. Butler, you will ask the footman to stand at the hall door. No one enters, no one goes out without my say-so." He turned to the company, his gaze unhurried, exact. "You will tell me, if you please, where you were during the half-hour before dinner. Only that. We will not accuse, we will only arrange the facts. Arrangement," his eyes softened, "is the first courtesy we pay to truth." Hastings watched him with a kind of awe he did not bother to hide. The little man with the precise shoes and the splendid moustaches had become, in an instant, the axis of the room. Grief, fear, indignation, all of it drew towards him and steadied. Lady Evelyn spoke first. "I was in the morning room," she said, her voice level. "Clara was with me." Clara nodded. "Until the gong. I went upstairs for my shawl." "Smoking room," Dr. Graves said. "I wrote a prescription I had forgotten." He patted his breast pocket and then, remembering himself, withdrew his hand. "The telephone," Jasper stammered. "Sir Bernard sent me to ring the office in town. I returned to help him dress." He was cheerful. Mrs. Finch smoothed her skirt. "I confess, I peeped at the library to see what novels you kept, Lady Evelyn. Such bindings. Then I powdered my nose in the cloakroom. One must, before dinner." Poirot inclined his head, as if these small squares of narrative had fallen into a grid he alone could see. Outside, the rain found the eaves and spoke there in a steady whisper. Somewhere, a clock decided to strike and did so bravely. He looked once more at the pale smear on Sir Bernard's cuff, then at the glass glimmering on its napkin island. "We must be calm," he said. "We must be exact. In this house order has been offended, we shall restore it. And when we have put every chair and every word in its proper place, we shall see what remains upon the floor." Chapter 4, Whispers in the Night. The hours following Sir Bernard Hawthorne's sudden death passed in a haze of disbelief. The police had come and gone, efficient in their notes but respectful of Poirot's reputation. A constable remained in the hall, and the body of Sir Bernard lay in the library, attended by solemn servants. The house, once filled with the easy murmur of country-house gaiety, seemed to have shrunk into itself. Every footfall echoed. Every door creak was amplified into a sinister sound. Dinner had been abandoned, though trays of sandwiches and weak tea appeared, dutifully ignored. The guests gathered in uneasy clusters, like fragments of glass awaiting a sweep of the broom. It was then Poirot began his discreet rounds, listening more than he spoke, observing with the delicacy of a surgeon testing for hidden pain. Hastings followed, notebook in hand, though most of the notes were his impressions rather than facts. Lady Evelyn Hawthorne. Poirot found Lady Evelyn in the morning room, seated by the unlit fire, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her pearls gleamed faintly in the lamplight. Clara Morton stood behind her chair, silent, as if serving as both companion and sentinel. "Madam," Poirot said softly, bowing. "It grieves me deeply to intrude upon your sorrow. Yet in justice to Sir Bernard, I must ask you some questions." Her eyes, red from tears but steady, lifted to his. "You believe it was deliberate, then?" "Not illness, not chance." "Madam, I believe what the facts insist upon. Sir Bernard did not die from his heart alone." She exhaled, as though some inner truth had been confirmed. "Our marriage," she said, "was not easy. Bernard was determined. His will left no space for another's. He demanded loyalty, obedience, silence. I gave what I could, and endured what I could not." Her fingers tightened. "But to kill him?" "No, monsieur. That is not my way." Poirot nodded gravely. "And yet you concealed the medicine bottle in the drawing-room earlier today." Her lips parted. Clara shifted behind her, startled. "I thought," Lady Evelyn whispered, "it would make me appear guilty. I was foolish. It was Bernard's prescription, Graves insisted he take it. I feared," she broke off, pressing a handkerchief to her lips. Clara spoke for her. She only wished to avoid gossip, Monsieur Poirot. People are quick to believe the worst. Poirot inclined his head. "Indeed. And yet gossip is often more accurate than silence." "Thank you, madam." Clara Morton. Later, Poirot contrived to speak with Clara alone. She sat at the piano, her hands resting on the keys without pressing them, as though afraid the sound would accuse her. "You are devoted to Lady Evelyn," Poirot observed. Yes, Clara replied simply. She has shown me more kindness than anyone else. I would protect her from every cruelty. Poirot leaned closer. Even from Sir Bernard. Clara's dark eyes flashed. He treated her harshly. Not with blows, but with words. The sort that bruise deeper. He belittled her, mocked her, ignored her wishes. I hated it. She looked away quickly, ashamed of her vehemence. But hate is not the same as murder. None, Poirot said gently. But it is the soil in which murder may grow. Tell me, mademoiselle, of this flower, the violet pressed in your book of poetry. Her face coloured. It was not mine alone. Lady Evelyn placed it there. She said it reminded her of her girlhood. That is all. Poirot considered her carefully. You speak truth, but not the whole of it. Bon. The remainder will come when it is ready. Dr. Lionel Graves. In the smoking room, Poirot found Dr. Graves pouring himself a generous measure of brandy. The doctor raised his glass with a forced smile. A bitter business, eh? Still, we must not let it unman us. To Sir Bernard, poor fellow. Poirot did not drink. Doctor, you declared his death a seizure. Yet when I suggested otherwise, you were quick to insist upon your opinion. Too quick, perhaps. Graves flushed. You question my competence. Not competence, doctor. Candour. You are a man who loves the good opinion of others. A man who enjoys being believed. Graves bristled, then deflated with a sigh. Very well. I admit I was hasty. The truth is, I do not know. Bernard had heart trouble, yes, but this was different. Sudden, violent. Not like what I expected. But a doctor must say something, or people panic. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Ah. So you chose order over truth. Understandable. But remember, doctor, a false order is worse than disorder. Graves looked away, ashamed. Perhaps you are right. Still, who could have wanted him dead? He was a difficult man, but not hated. Poirot's moustaches quivered. On the contrary, doctor. Such men are loved only by their shadows. Jasper Fielding. The secretary was in the library, his papers scattered before him, though his hands shook too much to write. When Poirot entered, he leapt up as though caught stealing. Monsieur Poirot, I was just, these are important, Sir Bernard would have wished. Poirot raised a calming hand. Tranquil, monsieur. Sit. Let us be frank. You were with Sir Bernard before dinner. What passed between you? Fielding's throat bobbed. Nothing of consequence. He dictated a letter. I typed it and sent it by post. A letter to whom? I do not know. It was sealed before I saw the address. Poirot regarded him steadily. And yet, Jasper, you knew of the blackmail. The young man went white. How did you? You yourself revealed it. In your panic, your words betrayed you. A man innocent of knowledge cannot fear discovery. Fielding buried his face in his hands. He was being blackmailed, yes. I don't know by whom. Letters came, typed, unsigned. He paid, though it enraged him. Yesterday, another letter arrived, harsher than the rest. He swore he would pay no more. He dictated his refusal this very evening. Poirot nodded. And where is that letter now? Fielding gestured helplessly at the fireplace. He burned it. Said it was finished. Ah, Poirot murmured. But words leave traces even when fire consumes them. Merci, Monsieur. Mrs. Dorothy Finch. Poirot's final call was upon Mrs. Finch, ensconced in the small sitting room, a shawl about her shoulders and her lips pursed like a bird content with stolen crumbs. "A dreadful business," she said at once. "But between us, monsieur, it does not surprise me. Sir Bernard made enemies wherever he went. Why, only last week I heard." Poirot raised a hand. "Madam, you know too much." Her eyes widened with feigned innocence. "Too much? Surely one cannot know too much." "One can, madam, when one speaks of private matters never made public. You mentioned Sir Bernard's business quarrels at dinner. And just now, you spoke of enemies. How did you know? Unless you saw the letters." Her colour rose. I hear things. Servants talk, you know. Nothing escapes them. Perhaps." Poirot smiled without warmth. "Or perhaps you read what was not meant for you. The blackmailer's words, for instance." Mrs. Finch fluttered, but said no more. Poirot bowed himself out, leaving her muttering into her teacup. Poirot reflects. Later, when the household had retired, Poirot and Hastings sat in Poirot's guest chamber. The rain beat softly at the windows, and the fire burned low. "Well, Poirot," Hastings said, "what do you make of it? Everyone seems suspicious. Evelyn hides medicine. Clara hates Bernard. Graves is too eager to pronounce. Fielding admits blackmail. And Mrs. Finch, well, she knows more than she ought. Who's your culprit?" Poirot smiled, steepling his fingers. "Patience, mon ami. Each lies a little, tells the truth a little. But the picture is not yet whole. We have shadows, yes, but the form they conceal must wait for the proper light. For now, we have whispers in the night. Soon enough, they will become cries in the daylight." He adjusted his moustaches, satisfied. "Tomorrow, Hastings, we shall arrange the chairs in their correct order. And then the play will truly begin." Chapter 5. The Clues Assemble. The following morning dawned grey, a curtain of mist stretching across the Surrey lawns. The house seemed subdued, as though the walls themselves had absorbed the weight of grief and suspicion. Poirot, immaculate in a suit of dark grey with a violet tie-pin, breakfasted lightly in the dining room. Hastings applied himself more vigorously, though even he admitted the atmosphere dulled the appetite. "I say, Poirot," he muttered over his bacon, "the servants hardly dare clatter a plate. Everyone's walking on eggshells." "Mais naturellement," Poirot replied, cutting his toast into precise squares. "A murder is like a stone cast into a pond. The ripples, they reach even the smallest corners." He dabbed his lips. "But already, Hastings, the pond begins to clear. The clues, they gather themselves if one only has the patience to notice." In the study, Poirot began his systematic inspection with Sir Bernard's study. The police had taken notes but left most items untouched until laboratory tests could be arranged. Poirot, with Superintendent Garraway's reluctant blessing, was permitted a closer look. The room smelled faintly of smoke and ink. Books lined the shelves, business directories, engineering manuals, bound volumes of speeches. On the desk lay the heavy blotter Poirot had noticed before, beside an empty envelope addressed in Sir Bernard's bold hand. The letter itself was missing. "Curious," Poirot murmured. He addressed it, but perhaps did not send it. Hastings peered over his shoulder. Could be the blackmailer's reply? Or his own refusal, Poirot said. He held the blotter to the light. "See the indentations, mon ami." A ghost of words remains, though faint. He traced them with a fingertip, a capital N and the loop of a Y. Not enough to decipher fully, but suggestive. It is enough to know the letter was indeed written. What matters is why it was burned. In the fireplace lay the remnants of paper, curled into brittle crescents. Poirot sifted delicately with the poker, drawing out a fragment. Across it ran the words, "No more payments." "Ah!" Hastings exclaimed. He was ending the blackmail, just as Fielding said. Poirot nodded, and thereby signed his death warrant. A blackmailer loses his power when the victim resists. Unless, of course, he silences him instead. The medicine bottle. On the desk, among pens and paper, stood a small brown bottle of medicine, labelled in Dr. Graves's neat hand. Poirot removed the cork and sniffed cautiously. The odour was bitter, medicinal, yet not of poison. "Digitalis," Poirot said. "A remedy for the heart. Prescribed, I think, with sincerity. And yet, notice, more is missing than the dosage would suggest. Either Sir Bernard took too much, or someone helped themselves." He replaced the bottle carefully. "Lady Evelyn attempted to conceal this yesterday. Out of shame, perhaps, but also because it complicates the story. One death by medicine might be explained as accident. Another by powder in a wine glass, that is murder. The pressed flower." Later, Poirot requested to see Clara Morton. She brought with her the slim volume of poetry in which the violet had been pressed. He turned the pages delicately. "Why, mademoiselle, would you preserve this little bloom?" he asked. "It was given to me," Clara replied softly, "by Lady Evelyn. She said it reminded her of happier times. She asked me to keep it safe." Poirot's eyes flickered. "Then it is a symbol of friendship, yes? But to another eye, it could suggest romance, or even secrecy. Such misunderstandings, they are dangerous." Clara lowered her gaze. "I never meant to draw suspicion." "Suspicion," Poirot said gently, "is drawn like a moth to flame. It is not your doing. Yet I advise you, keep nothing hidden, not even small flowers. Concealment, however innocent, always appears guilty." Hastings' obvious suspect. In the corridor afterwards, Hastings tugged Poirot's sleeve. "Well, if you ask me, it's plain as day. Jasper Fielding's our man. He knew about the blackmail, he was close to Sir Bernard, and he looked dashed guilty last night. All the evidence points to him." Poirot smiled faintly. "All the evidence, Hastings? Or merely the evidence arranged for you to see? Remember, a good murderer scatters crumbs on the wrong trail. Fielding may be weak, foolish, even dishonest. But I doubt he is clever enough for murder." "Then who?" Hastings demanded. Poirot adjusted his tie. "We do not yet know. But we have begun to arrange the chairs in order. Soon, the pattern will emerge. The burnt scrap and Evelyn's guilt." By afternoon, Poirot had requested all guests to gather in the salon. He placed the burnt scrap from the fireplace on a tray, beside Sir Bernard's wine glass and the medicine bottle. Each item, he said, was a piece of a puzzle. Lady Evelyn paled at the sight of the medicine. "Must that be displayed, Monsieur Poirot?" "Oh, madam. The truth hides in the things people wish to keep unseen." She said nothing further, but her hand trembled as she lifted her teacup. Clara, seated beside her, reached across with quiet loyalty. Poirot's gaze shifted to Jasper. "Monsieur Fielding, you confirm Sir Bernard dictated a letter refusing further payments?" "Yes," Jasper admitted, swallowing hard. "He burned it straight after. I swear I know nothing more." "And you, Doctor?" Poirot turned to Graves. "You prescribed this digitalis?" "Certainly," Graves replied, bristling. "A standard dosage for his heart. Nothing more. If more is missing, perhaps Bernard took it himself." he never heeded advice. Perhaps, Poirot murmured. Or perhaps someone borrowed a little to disguise another substance. Mrs. Finch slips. Throughout the discussion, Mrs. Finch was fidgeting with her brooch, eyes darting eagerly. At last she blurted, "I heard Bernard say it, I did. No more payments. He said it right here in this room." She stopped abruptly, colour draining from her face. Poirot's head turned sharply. "Madam, how could you have heard those words? They were written, not spoken." Unless, his voice trailed off, polite yet edged. Mrs. Finch stammered, I must have misremembered. Perhaps I overheard something similar." Poirot smiled thinly. "Perhaps, madam. But one must take care not to know more than one should. Knowledge, it is a sharp knife, it can wound the hand that grasps it." Poirot reflects. That evening, Hastings found Poirot alone in the library, pacing slowly between desk and fireplace. "Well?" Hastings asked. "Do we know more now than before?" Poirot paused, eyes glittering. "We know enough to see the shape of the puzzle. Listen, Hastings. 1. Sir Bernard was being blackmailed. 2. He resolved to resist. 3. A letter confirming this was burned. 4. His medicine bottle is suspiciously diminished. 5. A powder was placed on his glass. 6. Our neighbour, Madam Finch, betrays knowledge she should not have. Each fact alone is small, together they form the outline of a design. And the murderer?" Poirot raised a finger. "Patience. The murderer is clever. He, or she, has woven a fabric of lies and truths. To pluck the thread, one must wait until the fabric is stretched taut. Already, I see where the seams will give way." Hastings sighed, half frustrated, half admiring. "You never will give a straight answer, Poirot." Poirot smiled. "A straight answer is like a line without a curve, it has no elegance. But tomorrow, mon ami, I shall make my little experiment. Then we shall see who steps forward into the light." He looked once more at the wine glass, gleaming faintly in the lamplight. "The clues, they have assembled. Now it remains only to put them in their places. And when every chair is set correctly, the guilty one will have no seat left." Chapter 6, Red Herrings and Revelations. The following day at Hawthorne Lodge began under a weak sun that pierced the mist, casting long pale shadows across the lawns. Inside, however, the air remained thick with unease. Every guest carried the weight of suspicion, conversations were whispered, glances sidelong. Poirot, in contrast, seemed perfectly at ease, as though the house's disarray were but a puzzle box waiting to be solved. "Today, Hastings," he announced while adjusting his tie before the mirror, "we shall play a little game. We shall test the hearts of our companions. When the heart is pressed, it reveals what it hides." Hastings, already tugging on his gloves, gave a skeptical snort. "You mean you'll interrogate them again?" "Not interrogate, mon ami, observe. People betray themselves when they believe no one watches. And sometimes, one must arrange a small scene so that the truth may take its bow. The medicine as bait." After breakfast, Poirot set his plan in motion. In the drawing-room, where the guests gathered awkwardly over coffee, he placed the brown bottle of Digitalis upon the mantelpiece, as casually as though it were a forgotten ornament. Then he withdrew a little, engaging Hastings in apparently idle chatter about trains. The results were immediate. Lady Evelyn entered, saw the bottle, and hesitated. Her hand half reached for it, then drew back swiftly. A flush rose to her cheeks. "You see?" Poirot murmured to Hastings. "The instinct of concealment. She fears suspicion, though she may not be guilty." Moments later Dr. Graves strode in, followed by Jasper Fielding. Graves's eyes fell on the bottle. He scowled. "Really, that ought to be locked away," he muttered, and moved to snatch it up. But Jasper, almost simultaneously, darted forward. "Allow me, Doctor," he said, reaching out. Their hands collided, each gripping the glass. For a moment they struggled absurdly, then released it, both red-faced. Poirot's moustaches twitched with satisfaction. "Voila," he whispered. "The medicine provokes interest in more than one quarter. That is most revealing." Jasper cornered. Later, Poirot contrived to speak with Jasper in the corridor. The young secretary was pale, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. "You are troubled, monsieur," Poirot observed kindly. "Tell me what burdens you." Jasper swallowed. I cannot bear the suspicion, Monsieur Poirot." "Yes, I knew about the blackmail. Yes, I panicked. But I swear I had no hand in Sir Bernard's death." Poirot raised a brow. "Then why, just now, did you seize the medicine bottle?" Jasper faltered. "Because I feared, if it were tested, they might think I tampered with it. I only wished to keep it from being used against me." "A curious defense," Poirot said softly. "One does not protect oneself by drawing attention." "I was desperate," Jasper whispered. "Do you not understand? Sir Bernard had found out about me. I had borrowed money from the petty cash. Only small amounts, but he was furious. He threatened to dismiss me. I thought if the police looked too closely, they would discover that, and it would ruin me. But I swear, monsieur, I am no murderer." Poirot studied him. "Your weakness is theft, not violence." "Bon. That is something." Clara's secret. In the music room, Poirot found Clara Morton practicing scales with dutiful precision. She looked up with apprehension. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you are loyal to Lady Evelyn. But loyalty, when secret, may appear as conspiracy. Tell me frankly, what do you hide?" Her dark eyes filled with tears. "Only my affection for her. I could not bear to see how he treated her. I sometimes thought, if only Sir Bernard were gone, she would be free. But wishing is not doing, monsieur. I swear I did nothing." Poirot patted her shoulder. "I believe you, child. You wish, yes. But your hands, they are not the hands of one who poisons." Graves under pressure. Later that afternoon, Poirot joined Dr. Graves in the garden. The doctor smoked a cigar, trying to project calm authority. "Doctor," Poirot began, "your prescription bottle is of great interest. The dosage seems heavier than expected. Might Sir Bernard have taken more than you allowed?" Graves frowned. "He was careless, yes. But he would not exceed it knowingly. Unless," he hesitated. "Unless?" Poirot pressed. "Unless someone dosed him secretly." Graves drew on his cigar, exhaling in irritation. "Look, Poirot, I am no poisoner. I am a physician. Yet everyone looks at me as though I killed him myself. It is intolerable. Then prove your innocence, doctor. Speak the truth. Where were you in that half hour before dinner?" Graves hesitated again, then said stiffly, "I was not in the smoking room as I claimed. I was in the study. I had left my medical bag there earlier. I retrieved it before dinner." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Ah. A correction. Now we approach something like honesty." Mrs. Finch slips again. That evening, over a strained supper, Mrs. Finch once more proved too eager. "Of course," she said loudly, "Bernard was receiving those dreadful letters for months. Why, I remember the very day the first arrived. He looked as if he'd swallowed poison already. Lady Evelyn looked sharply at her. "How can you possibly know when the first letter came?" Mrs. Finch flushed crimson. "Why, the servants talked of it. Everyone in the neighbourhood knew." But Poirot shook his head. "No, madam. Everyone did not know. You speak too freely of things seen only by a few. You know more than you admit. One day soon, you will tell me all." Poirot's private reflection. Later that night, Poirot and Hastings retired to their rooms. Hastings, restless, followed Poirot into his chamber. "Dash it all, Poirot, I don't see we're any closer. Everyone seems suspicious, but none more than the other. We've nothing but gossip and guesswork." Poirot smiled faintly. "On the contrary, mon ami. We have seen much today. Lady Evelyn tries to hide medicine out of shame. Jasper reveals theft and fear, but not murder. Clara loves her mistress, but her soul is gentle. Graves lies to protect his dignity, not his conscience. And Mrs. Finch, she knows far too much. Each revelation removes one veil, though others remain." "But which is the murderer?" Hastings demanded. Poirot adjusted his moustaches, his eyes shining. "The murderer, Hastings, is like a spider in its web. We see the tremors of the strands, but not the spider itself. Yet it cannot remain hidden forever. I have made my little tests. The guilty one has already betrayed themselves, though not yet to you. Soon, very soon, we shall tighten the circle." He looked out into the dark garden, where the mist had returned, curling around the trees. "Red herrings, Hastings, we have in plenty. But among them swims one true fish, the truth. And I, Hercule Poirot, will land it." Chapter 7. Poirot makes arrangements. The night after Poirot's little experiments, the house at Hawthorne Lodge grew heavier with silence. Even the servants walked more softly, as if unwilling to disturb the gloom. Each guest had retreated early, some to brood, others to hide. But Poirot did not rest. He paced his chamber with the careful energy of a chess player planning the final moves of a long match. Hastings, ever loyal, finally broke the quiet. "Poirot, we've been here 2 days now, and the place is full of whispers and lies. You've uncovered theft, concealment, secrets, but where is the proof? We've still no clear culprit." Poirot stopped pacing and gave Hastings a look of mild reproach. "Proof, mon ami, is a word much abused. People think it means a photograph, a signature, a confession. Pah! True proof is when all the facts, when placed in order, admit of only one possible conclusion. That conclusion, Hastings, I already see." Hastings nearly dropped his pipe. "You mean, you know who did it?" Poirot's moustaches curved upwards. "But of course. The pieces are all before us. Each guest has played their role, each has revealed more than they intended. The question is not who, but how best to reveal it to all. For justice, Hastings, must not only be done, it must be seen to be done." The gathering requested. The next morning Poirot requested that everyone meet him after luncheon in the grand salon. His tone was so composed, so courteous, that none dared refuse. Yet apprehension lingered in the air like storm clouds. Lady Evelyn appeared pale, Clara hovered protectively near her, Dr. Graves smoked incessantly, Jasper Fielding kept fiddling with his spectacles, and Mrs. Finch carried herself with forced cheer, though her eyes betrayed nerves. Hastings, standing at Poirot's side, whispered, "They all look like they expect to be arrested on the spot." "Bon," murmured Poirot. "That is exactly the condition I desire. When people are afraid, they betray themselves. The chairs in order." When all were assembled, Poirot made a little performance of arranging the chairs. He dragged them into a semicircle, aligning them with fastidious care. Symmetry, Miss Amos, he explained, is important. It pleases the eye, and it pleases the little grey cells. Disorder clouds the truth, order makes it shine. The others exchanged uneasy glances, yet obeyed when he motioned for them to sit. Poirot remained standing, his hands folded neatly before him. Last night, he began, I considered the facts as one considers the pieces of a jigsaw. Each alone means nothing, together they form a picture. Permit me to set them out for you. He gestured toward the table where the burn scrap, the medicine bottle, and the wine glass had been placed like exhibits in a courtroom. 1. Sir Bernard was receiving letters of blackmail. This we know from Mr. Fielding, and from the burn scrap in the fireplace reading no more payments. 2. Sir Bernard resolved to resist the blackmail, and this decision he did not conceal from his household. 3. The medicine prescribed for his heart was diminished beyond what could be explained by dosage. 4. The glass from which he drank contained traces of powder. 5. Several of you have knowledge or secrets you would rather conceal. His gaze travelled deliberately from one to the next. Clara shifted uncomfortably, Graves puffed on his cigar, Jasper flushed, Lady Evelyn looked down at her folded hands, Mrs. Finch fussed with her brooch. Hastings' frustration. Hastings could hardly contain himself. That's all very neat, Poirot, but it still doesn't point to any one of them in particular. Everyone looks dashed suspicious. Poirot smiled indulgently. Patience, Hastings. To arrange the chairs is not the same as to choose who sits where. That is my next step. The reactions. Poirot began his delicate probing, speaking almost idly, yet watching intently. To Lady Evelyn, he said, you concealed the medicine bottle. Out of fear of suspicion, yes. Yet in so doing you made yourself appear guilty. Lady Evelyn's voice, though low, was steady. I only wanted to protect the family from scandal. That is all. To Clara, Poirot continued, you kept the flower. It was innocent, but it gave the impression of secrets shared. Again, not guilty, but suggestive. Clara murmured, I only wished to comfort her. To Jasper, Poirot said, you were careless with Sir Bernard's funds. You feared exposure. That made you panic. But panic is not poison, monsieur. I do not believe you have the subtlety for such a crime. Jasper flushed but nodded, almost grateful. To Dr. Graves, Poirot went on, you lied about your movements. Not to hide guilt, but to protect your dignity. You are vain, doctor, but not murderous. Graves bristled, then sank back, muttering. Finally, Poirot turned to Mrs. Finch. His tone softened. Madam, you are different. You know things you should not know. You speak of private letters, of words never spoken aloud. You make slips, and then you smile too brightly. Here, Miss Amos, is where the picture begins to resolve. Mrs. Finch gave a short, nervous laugh. Oh, nonsense, Monsieur Poirot. I simply hear gossip, nothing more. You cannot think I... Poirot raised his hand. I do not accuse, yet. I only arrange. Tomorrow morning, Miss Amos, we shall meet again in this room. Then I shall set the final chair in its place. Then, I promise you, the truth will be revealed to all. The uneasy night. That evening the household was restless. Clara wept quietly in her room, Lady Evelyn paced like a prisoner, Jasper sulked over ledgers he no longer had reason to keep, Dr. Graves drowned himself in brandy, Mrs. Finch remained awake, moving restlessly from sitting room to library, muttering to herself. The servants whispered in corners, speaking of curses and of Poirot's brilliance in the same breath. Hastings, too, could not sleep. He went to Poirot's chamber, where he found the detective calmly polishing his shoes. For heaven's sake, Poirot, he burst out, you've got them all on edge. Why not reveal the culprit now instead of waiting until morning? Poirot looked up serenely. Because, mon ami, the revelation must not only convince, it must astonish. If I name the murderer now, in whispers, it is mere accusation. But if I do so tomorrow, before all, with the order of facts laid bare, then the truth cannot be denied. You see? Justice must have theatre. Theatre! Hastings repeated. You treat it like a play. Poirot smiled. Exactly. And tonight, each actor waits backstage, dreading their part. That is as I wish it. Fear loosens tongues, Hastings. It frays nerves. By tomorrow, one of them may have already betrayed themselves. Poirot's quiet confidence. When Hastings at last withdrew, Poirot set aside his shoes and sat by the window, gazing out at the moonlit lawns. His small figure was very still, but his mind raced. He replayed each conversation, each slip of the tongue, each anxious glance. To another, the fragments might appear inconclusive. To Poirot, they formed a perfect pattern. The web is spun, he murmured to himself. Tomorrow, the spider shall be revealed. And with that, Hercule Poirot extinguished the lamp, the glow of certainty upon his face, while Hawthorne Lodge lay shrouded in uneasy slumber, awaiting the denouement. Chapter 8. The Final Curtain. Morning broke clear and cold, the mist rolled back as though a veil had been lifted. At Hawthorne Lodge, however, tension clung like frost upon the windows. Breakfast was a muted affair. Lady Evelyn barely touched her tea, Clara's eyes were rimmed with sleeplessness, Dr. Graves looked grey and haggard, Jasper fumbled his toast into crumbs, and Mrs. Finch talked too brightly, filling silences she clearly feared. Poirot, by contrast, seemed refreshed. He ate sparingly, admired the symmetry of the marmalade jars, and even complimented the butler on the shine of the silver. Hastings, watching him, thought his calmness extraordinary. It's as though he enjoys it, he muttered to himself. After breakfast, Poirot requested that all gather once more in the grand salon. No one dared object. They took their places in the semicircle of chairs he had arranged the day before, as if on trial. Poirot remained standing, a small figure of perfect composure, his moustaches gleaming like twin sabres in the morning light. Poirot sets the stage. My friends, Poirot began, his voice low but firm, you are weary, you are frightened, and you are suspicious of one another. That is natural. A terrible crime has been committed here. Sir Bernard Hawthorne did not die of illness. He was poisoned. A shiver passed through the room. Poirot raised a finger. We have considered the evidence. The traces of powder on the rim of his glass. The suspicious depletion of his medicine. The burn scrap declaring no more payments. And above all, the web of secrecy and fear that surrounds this household. Each of you has something to hide. But only one of you has committed murder. Hastings held his breath. Clearing the innocent. Poirot turned first to Lady Evelyn. You concealed the medicine bottle, madam. That was unwise. But you did so from fear of scandal, not from guilt. Your marriage was unhappy, but your pride is too strong to stoop to such a deed. Lady Evelyn closed her eyes, relief mingling with sorrow. To Clara, Poirot said, you loved your mistress with loyalty. You hated Sir Bernard for his cruelty. But you are young, too young for such a crime. Your eyes reveal passion, but not calculation. Clara gave a sob and grasped Lady Evelyn's hand. To Dr. Graves, Poirot continued, you lied about your movements. You wished to seem competent, dignified, always in control. But vanity is not murder, doctor. You wrote prescriptions, yes, but you did not poison your patient. Graves sighed deeply, as though a great weight had shifted from his shoulders. Poirot turned next to Jasper. You feared discovery of your thefts. You panicked, you seized the medicine bottle, you behaved foolishly. Yet your crime was petty greed, not murder. You are no spider, monsieur, only a fly caught in the web. Jasper slumped forward, his face hidden in his hands. The spotlight on Mrs. Finch. At last Poirot's gaze fixed upon Mrs. Dorothy Finch. But you, madam, you are different. From the first, you knew too much. You spoke of blackmail before anyone had mentioned it. You claimed to have overheard words that were never spoken aloud. You revealed knowledge of letters no one else had seen. Always, you excused it as gossip. But gossip is never so precise. No, madam, you knew because you were the blackmailer. Mrs. Finch gave a sharp laugh, but it rang hollow. Ridiculous. I am a respectable widow. Why would I stoop to blackmail? Because you needed money, Poirot said calmly. Your husband left debts. Your lifestyle exceeded your means. You discovered Sir Bernard's youthful indiscretions, an affair, a risky investment, perhaps both. You sent letters, demanded payments. And for a time, he paid. But when he refused, when he burned the last letter, you panicked. You could not allow him to expose you. So you silenced him. The room held its breath. The method. Poirot lifted the wine glass from the table, holding it delicately by the stem. The powder on this rim, it was not medicine. It was a finely ground preparation, slipped on by your hand, madam, when you leaned across Sir Bernard at dinner, pretending to adjust his napkin. In doing so, you left a faint smudge upon his cuff, which my eyes observed. You meant it to appear as though his heart had simply failed. But your carelessness betrayed you. Mrs. Finch's face had drained of colour. You cannot prove that, she whispered. Mais non, madam? You yourself proved it when you spoke of no more payments. Those were the words on the burned letter. Only the blackmailer could know them. You betrayed yourself with your own tongue. The confrontation. Mrs. Finch clutched her shawl, her eyes darting desperately around the room. They'll never believe you. I was his friend, Di. Poirot raised his hand. Madam, enough. You were not his friend. You were his enemy. Greed and fear drove you. You wove lies around yourself, but the pattern was flawed. A word here, a gesture there, and the truth was revealed. The silence was broken by Lady Evelyn, who rose to her feet, her voice trembling. Is it true? Did you do this? Mrs. Finch faltered, then slumped back in her chair. He would have ruined me, she muttered. I had no choice. Poirot's eyes grew stern. There is always a choice, madam. And you chose murder. Justice assembled. Superintendent Garraway, who had been summoned by Poirot in anticipation, entered quietly with 2 constables. Mrs. Finch was taken away, protesting weakly. The others sat stunned, scarcely able to speak. Poirot, brushing a speck of dust from his sleeve, turned to Hastings. You see, mon ami, how simple it was. Each clue pointed to her. The powder, the smudge, the slip of the tongue. The others had secrets, yes, but only she had murder in her heart. Hastings shook his head in wonder. Dash it, Poirot, I never saw it. I thought Fielding for certain. Poirot smiled. Ah, Hastings. You are too honest to suspect dishonesty where it hides in plain sight. But he tapped his forehead, I look for the little details, the irregularities, the psychology. And they always tell the truth. Poirot's epilogue. Later, as they prepared to leave Hawthorne Lodge, Hastings asked, Do you think the place will ever recover from this scandal? Poirot adjusted his hat with exquisite care. Perhaps, mon ami. Time heals wounds, even those made by poison. Lady Evelyn will endure, Clara will remain loyal, Jasper may yet redeem himself, and Dr. Graves will continue to prescribe. But the memory will linger, like the faint trace of powder on a glass. They stepped out into the cold, bright morning. The lawn stretched serene, as though nothing had happened. Poirot paused at the gate, gazing back at the house. It was not the complexity of the crime that intrigued me, Hastings, but the symmetry. Disorder concealed within order, falsehood dressed as truth. And when the chairs were arranged properly, there was but one place left for guilt to sit. Hastings nodded slowly. And you, Poirot, you always see the empty chair. Poirot smiled, his moustaches impeccable, his eyes shining. Exactement, mon ami. That is why the murderer never escapes. And with that, they departed Hawthorne Lodge, leaving behind its shadows, its secrets, and the certainty that once again Hercule Poirot's little grey cells had triumphed.